Well, hello, good people of Corpus Christi Catholic Church. Once again, it is me, Dr. Leonard Kelly, and today is Wednesday of Holy Week 2021. And I thought it would be kind of cool to do a video based on a question that I get a lot. Over my 20-year career in catechesis, I've gotten this question a lot. It's from parents. And the question is, how do I engage my children in faith, or how do I keep my children engaged in faith? So today's purpose of this video is I'm going to give parents ideas on how to keep their children engaged in their faith. And first, we're going to look to St. Monica, who is the patron saint for mothers who never give up. And then we're going to look at participation in the Holy Mass and the sacramental life. How do you participate and how to get your children involved? Does your home share your faith? We're going to talk a little bit about what you can do at home to encourage intellectual curiosity from your children. Talk to your children. There's an academic article that goes into talking about religion, how highly religious youth and parents discuss their faith. I think that's an interesting article that we're going to kind of dive into a little bit today. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to share your story with your children regarding your faith and how we can pass it on. And finally, we're going to wrap it up with Holy Week, considering it is Wednesday of Holy Week. So let's get started. First of all, I think it's important as a parent that you never give up. So St. Monica teaches us that to never give up. St. Monica was a Christian, and her father gave her off to marry to a pagan. This really, really bothered her, and for pretty much her entire adult life, she prayed for the conversion of her husband and for the conversion of her oldest child, who happened to be St. Augustine. And she would cry and weep bitterly because she was so fear of their soul. And finally, the local bishop says to St. Monica, God would not allow these tears to be wasted. And so here you have the mural of St. Monica, who is Tears of St. Monica as she cries to heaven. And eventually her husband did convert. He was baptized the year before his death. And her son converted and was baptized by St. Ambrose in Milan. And he became one of our greatest saints, a doctor of the church, and a giant intellectual contributor to the Catholic faith. So never give up. If it seems like your children are giving you a hard time, don't give up. Stay in the fight. Make sure that you continuously are engaged, you attend Mass at least weekly, and that you live a sacramental life. Go to confession. Make sure that your children receive the sacraments at the appropriate time so that they know that these sacraments are important and Mass is important. Okay, intellectually engage your child. So teach them to pray. Pray with them. Teach them to pray the Rosary and other Catholic prayers. Teach them to pray the Divine Mercy, Stations of the Cross. Pray before dinner. Pray before bed. Listen to music that praises God, so songs get stuck in their head and they pray all day. These are just things you can do to constantly keep them aware of our Lord Jesus Christ and the importance of our faith to you. Have art and statues around your house. Have your favorite saints. Have a mural of the Last Supper. Have the Pieta. Watch uplifting movies that create questions about the faith, and be engaged yourself. And your child will see your engagement, and they themselves will realize the importance of it through you. And so these are things that you can do to keep your child intellectually engaged. Now, talking about religion to children is tough. It's even tough for me. Recently, during COVID, my daughter and I would start taking trips around New England, and on a trip up to upstate New York, so we would just get in the car, we would drive 3 hours and turn around and drive 3 hours back because we had nothing better to do. We were stuck into COVID, and on one of the trips, I tried to get her to talk about religion, and I found that it was a very difficult thing to do. She wasn't all that open and willing, and that's my daughter. So eventually, I coaxed her into it, and she started talking about things she was interested in. But I reached out, and I was like, So I found this article called Talking About Religion and How Highly Religious Youth and Parents Discuss Their Faith. And I really liked it, and I thought I would share it with you. So it's not always easy. It's not even always easy for me. but I, like St. Monica, I never give up. The conclusion of the article, I'm going to start with the conclusion. It goes, it's important that as a parent, you adjust your method of conversation with your child, trying to find autonomy in your individual child's culture, meaning that your child has a culture that's probably far different than ours. I'm a Gen Xer, and my daughter is 12. Technology, cell phones, even the comic books they read are so infinitely different than the culture that I grew up in. It really is a challenge, but I try to stay engaged, and I try to make sure that the conversations we have regarding faith is current applicable to her, and I make sure that she is engaged in her faith. So she reads Japanese comic books, which is completely foreign to me, and it's a foreign culture, but I make sure that there's autonomy between the books that she's reading and our faith, and I make sure that there's nothing that would distract from it, and I do check that. It's important. So it's important in these conversations that you have with your child to let your child freely initiate the conversation. That's pretty self-explanatory. If your child asks you a question, be open to answering their question. You may not always know the answer. That's fine. Look up the answer together. Or even better yet, say, I'm not sure about that. Pull out your phone and why don't you Google that and teach me? And then have your child pull out their phone, Google it, and then teach you the answer to the question. I mean, that's a very powerful thing, and then you can have a good conversation. You don't need to understand very deep theological concepts to have a good, solid conversation with your child regarding their faith and their love of Jesus as you try to help them build a personal relationship with their Lord. But you just need to be open to have those conversations. Direct the conversation. Let your child direct the conversation, and let your child contribute to the conversation. So don't work just to talk. Make sure that you're listening to what they say. Parents should not dominate the conversation, and a transactional conversation fosters exploration of religious topics and religious socialization in youth. Meaning that if you have a good, engaging conversation where your child walks away with something positive, they'll continue to explore religion and socialization. If you don't and you shut them down, then they're not going to explore it. They'll eventually just not be interested. Make sure that the conversation's you-centered conversation, meaning that you focus on the needs and interests and questions of your child, and that you work within the time constraints of your child. Meaning it's probably not a good idea during basketball practice to try to have a deep intellectual conversation about God when they're playing basketball. But Sunday afternoons, or make time that's good, and use that time to do it. And if you do that and you have youth-centered conversations, your child will most likely be more willing to engage in the conversation. They'll be happy, they'll engage more frequently in the conversation regarding their faith. So there's a great little graph here that kind of explains that in better detail. So what this graph says is it breaks down to what parents contribute, what adolescents contribute, what influences the parents, and what influences the adolescents in these conversations. And then it breaks it down to if you have a youth-centered, which is really child-centered conversation, or if it's parent-centered conversation. And so I'm going to go through this real quick because I think it's valuable. And now this article and this research was done on adolescents, but I think it's safe to say we can expand this to children, middle school, high school, young adults, and adult children. I certainly don't see that there could be any damage in it. And so I'm going to say children instead of youth and adolescents, because I really do think it could be expanded. So what do parents contribute to a religious conversation? Their religious conviction, their religious life experiences, examples of belief and practices, desire for adolescent to be religious, willingness to teach adolescents religiosity, and realization that adolescents must choose belief. Ultimately, in the end, your child's going to have to make that individual personalized decision that yes, they are going to believe, and yes, it is important for them to develop their personal relationship with the Lord. Okay. And in these conversations, what do the parents get out of it? Parents will gain knowledge about religion, their self, and their child. They'll have a continued increase in religiosity and spirituality. As you see your child grow, many times parents grow. Many times. It's a blessing. Your heart just burst with joy, as did St. Monica's when her son finally and her husband finally became Christian. Be sure parents will learn and adjust their methods of talking about religions to their child, and especially as their child matures. And there's a satisfaction from teaching religion to your children. Even if it's rejected initially, there's still satisfaction from teaching your child religion. And that's because we're called to do that, and whenever we answer the will of God, there's joy in our hearts. So those are what the parents get. Now, what do adolescents contribute, or what do children contribute? Their own personal life experience and questions that need explanation. And a lot of times these questions and life experiences comes from their peers, school, church, and media. There's a need for autonomy in a child and their thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. A lot of times their thoughts and feelings don't always add up with their beliefs, and they're trying to figure out how to make that happen. And so you got to help them with that. You got to kind of teach them that their beliefs and their thoughts and feelings kind of get in alignment. And then children have a desire to speak more than be spoken to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But what does that mean? Children are trying to figure out how this stuff works, and a lot of times they're going to talk and bounce things off of you or other people or their friends or their peers as they try to build these complex ideas of religion and faith and spirituality and their relationship with God. And so they need a board to bounce that off of. So make sure that you're available to listen to your child when they're ready. So now there's two major influences on adolescence. If the conversation is parent-centered, the child may be annoyed and get mad. They may be uninterested. They may not listen, and they're most likely going to be less likely to initiate conversations in the future. However, if the conversation is youth-centered, then they're going to be engaged, interested, they're going to enjoy the conversation, and they're going to be more likely to initiate future conversations. So what does a youth-centered conversation look like? Adolescents talk more and parents listen. Adolescents seek and receive understanding from parents. Religion is related to adolescents' life. Conversation is open, it's not close-ended. Parent and adolescent relationship is nurtured during these conversations. Parent-centered is parents talk too much. Parents give demands without explanation. Parents' talk is unsolicited or unwanted, and conversation is too restrictive. So basically, let your child explore their faith and let them ask questions regarding their faith, regarding how silly. Now, as a parent, our job is to remember that this is a child, and we need to keep them on the path. But let them move around on the path as long as they stay on it freely. Let them ask you questions regardless of how jumpy the questions may seem from topic to topic. Just go through their experience and their explanation with you, their exploration with you. So here's kind of an example. I thought this would be kind of an interesting thing to bring out. So here your child's been up all night and he's playing Xbox. Well, now it's 8 a.m. and it's time to go to Mass. But your child's tired and they don't want to wake up. But you force them up and now they're groggy and they ask you the question, why do I have to go to Mass? Well, here's two different answers. So the first answer is you could say, because I said so. And as a parent, that's your right. However, you just killed any engagement in that conversation. And you probably killed any intellectual curiosity or any advantage you had by them asking a question, even if the question wasn't coming in the right place. They're groggy, they don't want to go, and they say, why do I have to go to Mass? Well, that's a question. And if you answer because I said so, well, that's not very engaging to them. However, if you take the opportunity, like this guy, and you explain to your child that it's one of the 10 Commandments to remember and to keep the holy day, the Sabbath day holy, and that we have a responsibility to go to church, to pray with our community, to pray for our community, to pray for the Pope, to pray for our leaders, to pray for, to receive the Eucharist, to live a sacramental life. And you explain the importance of a sacramental life. Maybe you draw out reasons why you enjoy Mass. I don't know what I would do if I miss Mass on Sunday. I really need the power of the Eucharist to help me get through life and things like that. Share those stories. And then you can share the story of Christ, where at the Garden of Gethsemane, he was so stressed out that he was sweating blood. And he was sweating blood because he knew that he was getting ready to get arrested, and he was going to go through a terrible tribulation of torture and beatings and mocking, and eventually he was going to be crucified and he was going to die, and he knew he needed to do that. So in the garden, he goes to his buddies, and he finds them sleeping, and he says to him, couldn't you stay awake with me for an hour?" As they were sleeping. And then you can explain to your child that on Sunday when we go to Mass, that's us giving our hour to the Lord. And that's just a much more powerful, engaging way. And maybe you don't use that story, maybe you use other stories. But that's far more engaging from a small little question, why do I have to go to Mass, than because I said so or having an argument or fight. But you created a story that hopefully creates some kind of interest, where you're talking about Jesus who was sweating blood, and his friends his best friends fall asleep with him while he's undergoing this deep test. And so I think that's a fantastic way to draw out that article, is be sure to share those stories at the time. And so when your child asks a question, why do I have to go to Mass? Hey, that's fair game. Answer it. So, all right. So this week's Holy Week. Now, this is one of the best ways to intellectually engage your child, and regardless of age. And through Holy Week, we have such a wonderful liturgy, the Triduum. I think it's really a wonderful opportunity to, share your faith and the story of the Paschal mystery of the Lord with children. And I think it's so important to go, because so many things are different, and yet so many things are so beautiful. For example, on Holy Thursday, you have washing of the feet. You have the taking away of the Blessed Sacrament. The tabernacle door remains open. It's the only time of year where we keep the tabernacle door, because the Blessed Sacrament's not in the tabernacle. The clergy, the priests and deacons, strip the altar, so the altar becomes bare. And then after the Mass of the Lord's Supper, we go out, usually outside of the church, and we adore the Blessed Sacrament. And then there's no conclusion to Mass. We just leave. That's all unusual. And those are great opportunities to ask your child, hey, why is the priest washing the feet? Why are they taking away the Blessed Sacrament? Hey, why is the door open? We always close the door. And hopefully they can answer those for you, or at least attempt. And if they can't, hopefully they ask you, like, I don't know, why is the door open? And that's your opportunity. You created the opportunity to engage your child intellectually by experiencing something with them. You're sharing the experience. And then you can ask questions, and then hopefully answer those questions. And if you don't know the answer, once again, it's not a big deal. Look it up on the phone. Look it up on your phone, or better yet, have the child look it up on their phone, and then have them teach you why we strip the altar, why there's no conclusion at the end of Mass, why the priest is washing the feet. And then Good Friday. There are no Masses celebrated on Good Friday. That's a fascinating thing. It's the only day of the year. Why is that? Why is the altar bare? We have no candles, no cross, no cloth on the altar. Why does Good Friday happen at 3 p.m. if possible? What's the deal with the adoration of the cross? Why is there no Eucharistic prayer? Well, there's a prayer, but it's not the Eucharistic prayer because the priest doesn't consecrate the Eucharist on Good Friday. We use the Eucharist that was consecrated on the Mass of the Lord's Supper. And then we all just depart in silence. It's very eerie. I love it. I love it. It's so different, but I really do like it. And then that moves us into the Easter Vigil. Why do we carry lighted lamps in our hands? Why do we have candles? Why does the vigil have to take place at night? It cannot take place during the day. And it has to start after sunset and it has to conclude before sunrise. Why? Why are the lights of the church out? Why is there a blazing fire? Why is there a big blazing fire at the beginning of the vigil? What's the deal with the big paschal candle? What are the 5 wounds of Christ on the candle? When the priest takes it, he blesses it, and he puts in the pens in the paschal candle. These are all things that you can talk to your children about to engage them. Make sure that they don't miss it or just glaze over why these things are. When you see the fire, ask them about, like, whoa, that's obviously different than our regular Sunday liturgy. Ask them why they think that might be. And then they'll be engaged and they'll enjoy it. And they'll enjoy talking to you, their parent, about these things. Children much rather talk to you about their faith than catechist. And so just be available. Anyway, I thought this would be a pretty cool thing to share with you for Holy Week. And I hope that everybody has a blessed Holy Week here at Corpus Christi. And I hope to see you all at the Triduum. God bless.